Millionaire man was wrongly imprisoned for 5 years. Once he got out of prison, he went to his mansion without telling anyone. He was shocked when he entered to his room and found out this. The October morning was cold and gray, typical of the Silicon Valley autumn. Daniel Harrison stood outside the prison gates, clutching a small canvas bag containing the few possessions he'd accumulated during his 5-year incarceration. The world looked different, sharper, yet somehow more distant, as if he were viewing reality through a pane of frosted glass. 5 years. 1,825 days of his life stolen. The prison uniform had been exchanged for a simple gray suit he'd purchased through a prison contact, a remnant of his former life's ability to navigate any situation. His lawyer, Martin Green, had arranged for the clothes and managed the bare minimum of his remaining assets. But Daniel knew the world he once knew had fundamentally changed. As he walked away from Pelican Bay State Prison, the weight of his wrongful conviction pressed down on him. He remembered the day everything fell apart, a meticulously planned takedown of his tech company, Horizon Innovations. What had begun as a groundbreaking artificial intelligence platform for financial risk management had become his personal nightmare. The false accusations of financial fraud had come suddenly. Corporate espionage, fabricated bank statements, manipulated email chains. A perfect storm of manufactured evidence that had destroyed everything he'd built. His team of 250 employees, his $50 million company, his reputation, all vanished in the blink of an eye. During his trial, Daniel watched helplessly as prosecutors painted him as a calculating fraudster. His own business partners, people he'd considered friends for years, testified against him. Only later would he discover the true puppet master behind his downfall. In prison, Daniel had transformed. The soft tech entrepreneur who once lived in a $12 million Atherton mansion became something else. Lean, disciplined, educated. He'd spent his time studying law, understanding financial crimes, and methodically piecing together the puzzle of his destruction. Every book, every conversation, every scrap of information became a potential piece of evidence. His marriage hadn't survived the first year of his imprisonment. Rebecca, his wife of 15 years, had filed for divorce 3 months after his conviction. Their twin daughters, Emma and Sophia, were now teenagers who barely remembered him as anything more than a distant photograph and a painful family memory. Martin Green pulled up in a nondescript black sedan. The lawyer looked older, more worn. His once crisp suit now seemed slightly ill-fitting, a testament to the years of fighting Daniel's case. "We've got work to do," Martin said simply, offering no emotional reunion. "But first, we need to get you home." Home. The word felt strange to Daniel. His mansion in Atherton stood as a monument to his past life, untouched, yet fundamentally altered by his absence. He hadn't seen it since that terrible night when federal agents had stormed his property, seizing computers, documents, and shattering his world. As they drove, Daniel remained silent. Martin understood. They had spent countless hours discussing strategy, reviewing evidence, fighting a system that seemed designed to crush him. Now, finally, they were close to exposing the truth. The car turned onto Maple Avenue, where million-dollar homes nestled behind meticulously manicured landscapes. Daniel's property stood at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, a modern architectural marvel of glass, steel, and sustainable design. He had designed it himself, a reflection of his philosophy of innovation and transparency. "I'll go in first," Martin said. "Make sure everything is in order." But Daniel knew order was a relative concept. Nothing in his life had been in order for 5 years. The gate recognized Martin's authorized access code. As they drove up the long, curved driveway, Daniel noticed subtle changes. The landscaping looked maintained but not perfect. Some of the solar panels needed cleaning. A thin layer of dust seemed to have settled over the property's pristine exterior. Martin parked near the main entrance. The front door's biometric lock would still recognize Daniel's fingerprint, a security feature he had personally designed years ago. "I'll be back tomorrow," Martin said. "We need to start preparing the case against Vincent Carrera. The evidence Marcus Rodriguez provided is just the beginning." Daniel nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. Revenge wasn't his primary motivation. Justice was. As the lawyer drove away, Daniel placed his hand on the door's scanner. The familiar blue light swept across his palm, and the door clicked open. Little did he know, someone was waiting inside. Someone who would change everything. Silence of the mansion was broken only by the soft hum of the climate control system and Daniel's measured footsteps. Everything looked both familiar and alien, like a perfectly preserved museum of his past life. Expensive art pieces hung exactly where he'd placed them years ago. The custom-built bookshelves in his study still held his collection of technology journals, philosophy books, and first editions of innovation-focused texts. As he moved towards his study, a subtle sound caught his attention. Papers shuffling. A chair slightly scraping against the hardwood floor. Someone was here. Daniel's prison years had taught him more than just patience and legal research. He'd learned survival skills, how to move silently, how to assess potential threats. His hand instinctively reached to his side, a muscle memory from years of institutional living. Before remembering, he was no longer confined, no longer constantly on guard. Approaching the study's doorway, he saw a young man seated at his massive mahogany desk. The intruder was Hispanic, probably in his late teens or early 20s, wearing dark jeans and a faded black hoodie. Stacks of documents were spread out before him, and he was methodically sorting through files with a level of concentration that suggested he was more than a random burglar. Daniel cleared his throat. The young man's reaction was instantaneous but controlled. Instead of panic or aggression, he simply looked up, his dark eyes meeting Daniel's with a mixture of resignation and something else. Was it curiosity? Respect? "Marcus Rodriguez," the young man said, his voice steady. "I've been expecting you." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. The room felt charged with an unexpected tension that wasn't quite hostility, but far from friendly. "Expecting me?" Daniel finally responded, taking a step into the room. "I'm quite certain you weren't expecting me to walk through that door." A ghost of a smile crossed Marcus's face. "Fair point, Mr. Harrison, but I've been waiting for an opportunity like this for a long time." Daniel's mind raced. This wasn't a random break-in. This was deliberate, calculated. The way Marcus sorted through the documents, the calm demeanor. This wasn't the behavior of a typical young criminal. "You work for Vincent Carrera," Daniel stated. It wasn't a question. Marcus's expression hardened. "Worked, past tense, and that's precisely why I'm here." The young man pushed forward a manila folder. Daniel recognized some of the documents: financial statements, communication logs, detailed records that looked suspiciously like evidence. Evidence against Carrera. "You've been collecting these," Daniel said, picking up the folder. Marcus nodded. "For the past 18 months. I grew up in East San Jose. Carrera's organization has been my entire world since I was 14. But what I've learned, what I've seen..." He paused, his voice catching slightly. Someone needs to stop him. The story began to unfold. Marcus explained how he had been a low-level operative in Carrera's extensive criminal network. Initially recruited as a messenger, then gradually pulled into more complex operations. But something had changed. A series of increasingly brutal incidents, a growing understanding of the organization's true nature, had transformed Marcus. "Your case," Marcus said, "was never just about financial fraud. Carrera needed your company's technology gone. The AI risk management platform you were developing could have exposed multiple money laundering networks." Daniel listened, his legal training kicking in. Every statement, every piece of information was being mentally cataloged, analyzed. "Why me?" Daniel asked. "Why bring this to me?" Marcus looked down at his hands. "Because sometimes, the only way to break a cycle is to stand up, to choose a different path." The room fell silent. Two individuals from completely different worlds, brought together by a complex web of crime, injustice, and an unexpected quest for redemption. Outside, the California sun began to set, casting long shadows across the study, a metaphorical representation of the darkness they were about to illuminate. The study became their war room. Daniel's high-tech workspace, once a symbol of his innovative tech career, now transformed into a center of investigation. Massive monitors that had once displayed complex AI algorithms now flickered with financial records, communication logs, and intricate diagrams of Vincent Carrera's criminal network. Marcus spread out the documents he'd collected over the past 18 months. Each file represented a piece of a complex puzzle, a network of corruption that ran deeper than Daniel could have imagined. "Carrera's operation isn't just about money," Marcus explained, his fingers tracing a complex organizational chart. "It's a multi-layered system that infiltrates businesses, political circles, and law enforcement." Daniel leaned closer, his legal training and tech background creating a unique lens for analysis. The documents revealed a sophisticated operation that went far beyond simple criminal enterprise. Carrera had created an ecosystem of corruption, with tendrils reaching into municipal governments, tech startups, and financial institutions. "Your company, Horizon Innovations," Marcus continued, "was never just a target of opportunity. You were developing an AI platform that could detect complex financial irregularities in real time. That made you a genuine threat." The story began to unfold in painful detail. Carrera's organization had systematically worked to discredit Daniel. False financial records were created. Key witnesses were manipulated. Even Daniel's closest business associates were turned or threatened. "How did you get involved in all this?" Daniel asked, his voice low and controlled. Marcus's story was a testament to the harsh realities of urban survival. Growing up in a tough neighborhood in East San Jose, he'd been recruited by Carrera's organization when he was just 14. What started as simple courier jobs, delivering packages, passing messages, gradually evolved into more complex operations. "I was good at what I did," Marcus admitted. "Smart enough to be useful, but not so ambitious that I threatened the higher-ups. I saw everything, but nobody thought I was paying attention." The documents told a chilling story. Daniel's wrongful imprisonment was a carefully orchestrated plan to remove a technological threat. His AI platform could have exposed multiple illegal financial networks, not just Carrera's, but those of other criminal organizations and corrupt businesses. "These communication logs," Daniel said, pointing to a series of encrypted messages, They show direct communication between the prosecutors in my case and Carrera's associates. Marcus nodded. That's why I started collecting evidence. I realized I was part of something fundamentally wrong. Every person Carrera destroyed, every life ruined, it was just business to them. They worked through the night. Daniel's tech background and legal knowledge complemented Marcus's insider understanding of Carrera's organization. They mapped out connections, verified sources, and began building a comprehensive case. As dawn approached, they took a break. Daniel prepared coffee, a simple act that felt extraordinary after 5 years of institutional living. Marcus looked exhausted but determined. "We'll need help," Daniel said. "Someone who can navigate both the legal and investigative aspects of this case." They decided to contact Sarah Winters, a former federal prosecutor known for her integrity and willingness to take on complex cases. She had a reputation for pursuing justice, regardless of the personal or professional risks. The phone call came at 7:30 a.m. Sarah listened carefully as Daniel and Marcus outlined their evidence. Her response was measured but promising. "This is dynamite," she said. "But we'll need to be careful. Carrera has connections everywhere." The alliance was forming. An ex-convict wrongly imprisoned, a young man seeking redemption, and a principled lawyer willing to fight an impossible battle. Marcus looked at Daniel, a mix of hope and determination in his eyes. "We're going to make this right." Daniel's response was quiet but resolute. "Not just right. We're going to expose everything." Outside, the California morning began to break. A new day filled with the promise of justice, of redemption, of finally bringing the truth to light. The real battle was just beginning. The next 6 months became a meticulously planned campaign of legal and investigative strategy. Sarah Winters transformed her law office into a nerve center of investigation, with Daniel and Marcus working alongside her in a relentless pursuit of justice. Each piece of evidence was like a delicate piece of a complex puzzle. Marcus's insider knowledge proved invaluable. He understood the psychology of Carrera's organization, how they communicated, how they protected themselves, and most importantly, where their vulnerabilities lay. Carrera's power isn't just in his criminal network, Marcus explained during one late-night strategy session. It's in his ability to create complex layers of protection. Every illegal transaction is wrapped in multiple legal facades. Daniel's technological expertise became their secret weapon. He began reconstructing digital trails that Carrera's team had worked desperately to erase. Using advanced forensic techniques he'd developed during his years in tech, he could trace financial transactions through a labyrinth of shell companies and offshore accounts. Sarah Winters brought legal precision to their investigation. A former federal prosecutor with a stellar record, she understood the intricate dance of building an airtight case. Her connections within law enforcement and judicial circles provided additional leverage. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A mid-level accountant who had worked for one of Carrera's legitimate businesses reached out anonymously. Terrified but determined, the whistleblower provided a series of encrypted hard drives that contained comprehensive financial records. These documents show systematic money laundering spanning over a decade. The accountant's encrypted message read, "I can't live with this guilt anymore." The evidence was explosive. It wasn't just about Daniel's wrongful imprisonment anymore. They were uncovering a massive criminal enterprise that touched multiple industries, political circles, and law enforcement agencies. Marcus's role was particularly crucial. His intimate knowledge of Carrera's organization allowed them to understand the complex network of relationships and power dynamics. He knew which operatives could be pressured, which might be willing to turn state's evidence. My entire life, I thought this was just how the world worked, Marcus confessed to Daniel one evening. Survival, power, survival again. But now I see there's another way. Daniel saw more than just a potential witness in Marcus. He saw a young man seeking redemption, someone who wanted to break free from the cycle of crime that had defined his entire existence. The legal strategy became multifaceted. They weren't just fighting to clear Daniel's name. They were systematically dismantling Carrera's entire criminal infrastructure. Federal investigators became increasingly interested. The mountain of evidence Daniel, Marcus, and Sarah had compiled was too significant to ignore. Multiple grand jury proceedings were initiated. Subpoenas were issued. The carefully constructed walls of Carrera's organization began to crumble. Vincent Carrera realized the threat too late. His network of protection, built over decades of careful manipulation and strategic bribes, was being systematically dismantled. The final hearing was scheduled in the federal courthouse in San Jose. Daniel sat beside Sarah Winters, Marcus just behind them. The courtroom felt charged with an electricity of anticipation. Evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. Digital forensics told a story of calculated destruction and systematic corruption. Daniel's wrongful conviction was not just challenged, it was comprehensively and definitively demolished. But the victory was about more than just Daniel's exoneration. Carrera and 37 of his top associates were indicted on multiple charges: racketeering, fraud, witness tampering, money laundering. The criminal network that had operated with impunity for decades was being systematically dismantled. In a moment that would be remembered, the judge not only vacated Daniel's original conviction, but issued a rare public statement condemning the egregious miscarriage of justice that had occurred. The aftermath was transformative. Daniel's tech company, Horizon Innovations, was reinstated. His professional reputation was not just restored, it was elevated to that of a modern-day corporate hero who had fought and won against unprecedented odds. But the most profound transformation was personal. Daniel looked at Marcus, no longer just a witness, but a partner in this journey of justice. "I want to help you," Daniel said after the hearing. "Complete your education. Give you opportunities." Marcus was stunned. After everything he had done, after his years working for Carrera, someone was offering him a genuine chance. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Daniel's response was simple yet profound. Because everyone deserves a second chance, and because justice isn't just about punishment, it's about transformation. As they walked out of the courthouse, the California sun seemed brighter. A new chapter was beginning, not just for Daniel and Marcus, but for everyone who had been touched by Carrera's criminal enterprise. The path to vindication was complete. But the journey of redemption was just beginning.